So welcome to Velocity Code. Today we will discuss about what is .NET. So basically .NET framework is a framework developed by Microsoft, and it is only for Windows initially. Now things change, it is available cross platform. But before going into in depth about what is .NET and how it works, let's discuss about framework. Okay, a framework is an abstraction, okay, on which an user can write his software or his custom code so that he can build software fairly easily compared to starting from the scratch. Okay, and there is a lot of things inside a framework. Okay, like your software will be a block around the framework. Okay, see, as in the showing in the diagram, your code works on top of the framework. So framework, if you want to install your framework, then you code, then you need framework library. Okay, you also heard a bit some library. Okay, library is provides a list of methods or modules or predefined functions, whatever we call it, to work with. Okay, and that's the basic difference between the framework and your library. Okay, for example, library gives a list of functions, modules, but framework gives a full set of infrastructure to work with or to build your software. Okay, so example, we have .NET framework, Spring Boot framework, and we have Django framework, etc. For libraries, we have React, Knockout, jQuery. All these are libraries. Okay, so let's discuss about what is .NET framework now. Okay, so basically a .NET framework, as we discussed, it is a software framework developed by Microsoft for Windows. Okay, now what is there before .NET? Okay, so Microsoft developed .NET, but what is there before .NET? So we used to have two development methods. One is COM, one is DNA. So COM is component object model. So that means you can develop components using this technology. And DNA is distributed internet application architecture. So this is for internet application like web application at the time. Okay. Uh, these using these COM, we used to develop components that can be shared among the different applications. Okay, and the sharing is depends by the DLL versions and all. So a lot of resource can use these DLLs and all. DNA is more of a upper hand than this COM, so it is used to develop web applications. For example, we used to have ActiveX, Dynamic HTML, COM is part of the DNA, and then even ASP, the classic ASP is part of the DNA. Okay, so what is the problem with this COM and DNA? If you ask me, then the main problem with this one is the languages. So mostly the language we used to have is Visual C++ or or VB. But they are very difficult to learn and they are very incompatible to work with. Okay, so these languages are complex when you talk about the data type conversions and all. The data exchange between two layers is way too difficult at the time to transfer the data to access the database and all. And there were compatibility issues with using one DLL from VB to another DLL from C++. Okay, that's also another problem we used to have with these languages. And then we have another problem is with the difficulty to integrate with web technologies such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript and all. Okay, even the XML, even the Microsoft own technology was very difficult to work with. Lack the ability to communicate with the user over the HTTP protocol. So at the time, these languages doesn't have the much of the functionality to communicate with HTTP. To fix these issues, Microsoft created ASV, which works on the HTTP and it is based on VB. And then, you know, this is also not solved the problem, but it came added more problems into the framework. Okay. And also there is one more problem is the difficulty in side-by-side execution. Okay, so if you want to execute two DLLs or two versions of DLLs side by side in a single application, there is a lot difficult configuration we need to do, and sometimes it is impossible to work with the different versions on the same mission parallelly. Okay, so this is main biggest problem when it comes to the execution. And then there are some deployment issues. You can't have multiple versions of these deployments on a single machine. You need to use different servers to have different versions, so that's also a difficult part. And when you want to deploy these into client machine, these occupies a lot of space also. So these are the problems with classic COM and DNA, programming approaches. Then the birth of the .NET came. Okay, after a lot of complaints from the users uh, over the difficulty using with the DNA COM, the idea of .NET came with a project called Next Generation Windows Services. Okay, the concept contained the elaboration of new versions of Windows systems, Office products, MSN services, Visual Studio packages, lot of them, So all these new versions of Windows, MSN services, Visual Studio packages, all these are initially headed by Bill Gates, but later this project moved to a different name from Bill Gates to Steve Ballmer, who is then and now CEO of that company. So at the time the project named to the Internet of Next Generation. Okay, so this is the new term they give to this company. And for this Internet of Next Generation, the first step was .NET strategy. Okay, so this is where we heard the first time .NET term, like we heard it in the web, but that's where Microsoft used the first time .NET. So let's discuss what is .NET strategy. The Microsoft .NET strategy is a marketing plan that Microsoft followed in the 2000s. According to this strategy, Microsoft released .NET named products and services. This initiation is called, this initiation is called Microsoft .NET platform. Okay, so this Microsoft .NET platform is the first step to this .NET strategy. Then what is exactly .NET? Okay, so on June 22nd, 2000, Steve Ballmer, who is the head of this Internet of Next Generation, termed as, first time used that word, the .NET, he explained it as .NET represents a set, an environment, a programming infrastructure that supports the next generation of Internet as a platform. So .NET represents a set, an environment, a programming infrastructure that supports the next generation of Internet as a platform. So initially we have three products in this one: the Microsoft .NET platform, Microsoft .NET products and services, and then the third party .NET service. So we don't need to get into deep into these things. Okay, so they are all the way they formed is the first .NET application. But the first .NET 1.0 was released in February 13, 2002. A year and a half later it is announced. So